Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Go 24/7 podcast. Bryce Koon alongside Dylan Sanders. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you may be listening or watching as the month of July is here. MLB draft is tonight. This is recorded on Sunday. It's coming out on a Monday, though. So obviously by the time this is out, you're going to know where Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz are drafted, and maybe Ty Floyd as well. But Dylan, we're here to talk about football because we are 2 weeks away from SEC Media Days. And I think I just need to correct myself. We're a week away from SEC Media Days.
Yeah, we're like 3 weeks away from fall camp.
Dude,
well, we don't have an official date for fall camp yet. They usually keep that pretty close to the vest, but records show we're about 3 weeks away from fall camp. And that's just so fun. Because that means then once fall camp starts, we're a month away from football starting. So this is my favorite part of the year. Whenever you don't say the words that football's 2 months away, you go like, there's a week until this, and then there's a week until this, and then you play the game of like the interval game to where you trick your mind into thinking, well, it's essentially only 2 weeks away because that's whenever SEC starts.
And I love it too, Dylan, because when you see kind of the preview magazines hit the shelves, I know I bought one. It's a ton of fun. It's going to be exciting to see, and especially if you're an LSU fan. You haven't had to wait long for kind of the transition from baseball season to football, because baseball literally wrapped up two weeks ago now. But we're here to talk about football and some comments that hit the news waves, I guess now 2 weeks ago. Downing at the Manning Passing Academy at Nicholls State. Great event. Some of the top talent in the country is obviously there. Nussmeier and Jayden Daniels were there. And Jayden Daniels obviously kicking off what will be an interesting season from the media perspective. Dylan, I know we'll probably get into this later in the season and, watch some of the draft boards. I think he got a 4th round grade by people kind of if he would have come out or whatever. But, not only what he could project as a NFL pro, but really what he can project in 2023. And he wasn't shy about it. He sat and said, what you would expect a guy to say, that he thinks this is the top quarterback room in the country. Now, we're here to talk about today. There's been obviously some power rankings, some lists that come out. We can talk about the specifics. But, Dylan, it shouldn't surprise folks that he said this. I mean, what was he going to say? Well, I think we're about the 15th best room in the country. That's not going to happen. Like, no one's going to say that. But the comment, the face value comment, I mean, what was your reaction to it when you first heard it? And then I know you did a little digging as well. I mean, how do you feel about when I say, hey, LSU has the best quarterback room in the country?
Well, you say it, and then you're like, oh, yeah, of course they're going to say it. And then you start to think, and you're like, well, does it have some merit? And then you look at it, and, I mean, if they're not number one, they're number 2. It kind of depends on what you're weighing by quarterback room. Because Jayden Daniels, while everyone who's ever listened to this show or read anything on the boards knows I am a big fan of Jayden Daniels' game. I've been a proponent of it ever since he stepped on campus. But I mean, there's no hiding that he's not the best quarterback in the country. I think he's in the 10 best by himself.
Yeah.
If I had to put him. But he's not the best. The best is Caleb Williams. So then that automatically means you have to think of USC as probably potentially the best because they have Caleb Williams and they have they hit all the marks. They have like the returning sophomore that a lot of people like, and then they have the incoming freshman. And then they have the proven guy. So I think that's the only team that I think really has a claim to it other than that. People will want to look at Texas. And
a lot of talent there. I want to say that they have talent,
talent.
Star rating talent. They've got it there. They almost beat Alabama last year with Quinn Ewers, and he got hurt. So, I mean, you can't deny the talent, but I think with the production aspect is where I feel more comfortable saying LSU. Yeah. I was going to point this out real quick as we kind of get into it. Last month, and this might have changed, but early June, BetMGM.com came out with the Heisman odds, okay? And look, we know this is really trended towards a quarterback award. It has to take an unreal season for a guy that doesn't play quarterback and have the ball in his hands every single play to really win it. No surprise at the top, Caleb Williams. I mean, what he can do with the football in that offense. Jordan Travis, which we'll get to in a second. That's going to be a matchup that we're going to get to see those two guys go head-to-head in week 1. Drake May, another guy with a lot of eyes on him at North Carolina. Quinn Ewers, who we mentioned. Sam Hartman, who makes the jump from Wake Forest to Notre Dame. Bo Nix, which is a whole interesting story. And then Jayden Daniels, plus 1,600. He's tied with Michael Penix Jr. and Cade Klubnik, who will be kind of a first-year full-time starter over at Clemson. So when I read some of those names, I say, okay, obviously, and back up what you said, Jayden Daniels is a guy that a lot of people feel like, hey, he's one of the top 6 or 7. He's in that top 10. And I don't think that's for a debate. But what makes it I'll say an elite room is the fact that you got the guy behind him. If Jayden Daniels, God forbid, I'm knock on wood here, Dylan, if he loses, game to injury or, to anything that might happen, struggles, just doesn't look like himself, you got a guy back there in Nussmeier who, look, a lot of people got, caught up in the SEC title game. I know that you have been a guy that's been a Daniels proponent, but don't you have to say that the reason we're talking about a quarterback room kind of has to do with the rest of the guys? Ricky Collins, number 15th ranked quarterback last cycle. I mean, it's a solid room top to bottom. And so kind of continue what you were going on. Texas has a talented room. Georgia has a talented, unproven room. But I think when you talk about what you said, proven talent plus potential, I just don't think this comment was that outlandish for as many people on social media thought. And I'll say it was a lot of people who weren't LSU fans, and I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. We can just go through the SEC and just think about the teams that Nussmeier would start on that are at LSU, and it's a lot of them. It's a lot of them. I think he'd probably start at Alabama this year, which isn't saying much. Mississippi State, possibly. Ole Miss, Auburn, Mizzou, Vanderbilt, Florida. He'd start at Kentucky. He'd probably start at South Carolina. Spencer Rattler, like all the hype, but it'd be a competition.
Yeah.
Tennessee, he'd give Joe Milton a fight. Like he'd play. Yeah.
And look, he's probably going to play this year. I mean, we saw it throughout the bowl game. We saw it through spring practice. You and I even saw it during some of the recruiting camps they had over the summer. I mean, he was a guy that they said, hey, come out here and help when we have a big weekend visit. Bryce Underwood on campus, other guys as well. But, you mentioned around the SEC and a list that I've seen kind of going around, and look, it's preview magazine season. And, this is a time it's talking season. That's the commercial SEC network's running right now. It's talking season is here. But there's a reason that we get paid to do this, and I think it brings up a good topic. The guy that is consistently ahead of Jayden Daniels, and look, there's a lot of talent. You mentioned Joe Milton. Kentucky brings in a guy in Devin Leary that was really good at North Carolina State, but how does he make the jump, in the SEC? But it's KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, and I want to talk about that for a second because here's my take on it. KJ Jefferson can be a matchup nightmare. And we saw 2 seasons ago when they got off to that hot start, I think it was before they rolled into Athens, and nobody was going to beat that Georgia team in 2021. They were just, it was a Philadelphia Eagles defense. Like we've seen that, it is what it is. But Jefferson with different options and weapons is a really, really great player. Last year took, in my opinion, a step back. But how do you feel about, Jefferson being ranked ahead of Daniels? Because Daniels can do a lot with his legs. I understand the physical nature of KJ Jefferson, but when I talk about a guy with a complete package, I didn't grow up an LSU fan, so I feel like I'm the more unbiased approach here. I just would like Jayden Daniels more in the sense, his arm strength, arm talent. He's got to rein in some things. Every quarterback does. How do you feel about that? Jefferson kind of rated higher right now than Daniels in a lot of those preseason rankings.
The thing is that does KJ Jefferson have an Alabama game in him? Freshman, going back to Jaden's freshman year, taking down Justin Herbert. Does Jefferson have those games? Because what we know about Daniels, it's been proven, is that he does not get shaken in the big moments. And I feel like we always hear about how Arkansas and KJ Jefferson fall apart. And that's a big part of it in my eyes. I think Daniels is still the more proven guy. Jefferson, I think, is the more, Jefferson is a full package.
Kid's talented. Yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah.
But if I was taking a quarterback to lead my season right now, trying to win the SEC West a second time and then make that push into the college football playoff, I'm picking Daniels over Jefferson. Although it's crazy to say they've played the same amount of years pretty much. But I think Jaden's still more proven in like the big moments.
And I'll give you a counter argument to that. What the pushback is you're going to hear, well, they have more talent. LSU has more talent surrounding them. And look, while that's true, look, there are very few quarterbacks in the history of the game that could go in and win a national title without help. Like you could have, we've seen it. We've seen some great college quarterbacks on some average to below average college football teams.
And you could contort that Arkansas has had probably maybe just as good skill positions the past couple of years. Rocket Sanders, just to name one, Rocket Sanders is the best running back in the country. You have that working for you. I mean, that helps a lot as a quarterback, having the best running back next to you.
Yeah,
they've had good receivers.
Yeah, they've had talented receivers. It's not a knock on Jefferson, but I think it's more of, and I want to ask you this question because even inside the fan base, I mean, we talked a lot about outside. We listed some names when you talk about the best quarterback room, but those were kind of head on head, against Daniels, not necessarily having a guy like Nussmeier and then have a guy with, a really raw athletic tool set, in Ricky Collins, who, he's going to get a chance to kind of refine some of those things before he really challenges for the job. But Dylan, I wanted to ask you this because this fan base, you've been around the fan base. Why do you think Jayden Daniels, and talk about this, why do you think he is so maybe underrated? Is he underrated by LSU's own fan base, in your opinion? And what goes into that argument on that side of things?
I think I would say yes, because I just think that LSU last year is playing a different brand of football than they've ever played. Even like in the 2019 year, the great updated, more modern offense. Joe Burrow wasn't running as much. He could run, sneaky athlete. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's a type of football that it is has not been seen a bunch. But people still need to realize that 2022 was one of the best offenses in school history. It's just not coming in the ways that you're normally seeing it. Just the run first type quarterback. And Daniels only turning the ball over 3 times. I think that's hard. Well, throwing 3 interceptions, I'll say, because he, run more, you fumble more. But through the air, he was more selective, and that also was a bad thing at times where there were times where he needed to throw, but there were also times where even if he didn't get the throw, he made more stuff happen with his legs than he maybe could have on his arm. But the thing to me is points are points. It doesn't matter how you get them. He led one of the highest scoring and one of the most productive offenses in school history.
Yeah. You mentioned Daniels and the ability to the legs aspect. And look, I said this on the national aspect of this and talking with some national folks at 24/7, saying, look, they're not going to ask him to abandon his legs, but one of the things they do need to see him do is maybe be a little more aggressive in some of those deep balls, be able to hit these guys in some tight windows, over the shoulder grabs, because it is a talented wide receiver room. You mentioned last year, just for the people who maybe don't have it in front of them, 266 of 388 in passes completed, 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but he rushed for a team high 885 and 11 scores. Now, here's a situation specifically, and people like to, I call them cherry picking stats, but here's a situation specifically for me where I saw it really pay off. And I was watching LSU Day on the SEC Network. It was the last game was the Alabama LSU game from 2022. And yes, I did see you. I think you were wearing a nice sweater with a button down, filming Mason Taylor's catch. But on that drive, Daniels had a massive run. And one thing that I have seen a lot of people say and complain about is, well, he is really willing, you can take it two ways, I should say. He's really just willing to, if he didn't have his first read, he goes. When you go back and look at that and they show the, I don't know if you've ever watched this, but the kind of aerial cam that's no broadcast. It's literally just kind of almost a all 2022. It's what they really use for game film. There's nothing open. And he does have, the ability to get out sneaky fast. I think a lot of people say that he's a lot faster than you realize, really, his speed downfield. They're not going to ask him to get rid of that style of play. It's really one of the big things. And then you obviously go back to the touchdown that led to the 2-point conversion in overtime on the first play. But Dylan, I think that when you see what he brings to the table, I think he's underrated. I think that he is maybe taken for granted a little bit in what he has provided for this LSU team. Do I still think that, Garrett Nussmeier is a guy that can come in, whether it's this season or next, and could you win a championship? And that's the key part here as we kind of get, closer to the show. I believe so. Dylan, do you think that this team could win a championship with Daniels or Nussmeier at quarterback? Because to me, that's what would say you could be the best quarterback room in the country. Not every room can say that.
I think you could win. I think that this year, based off of what we've seen in the past, I would still, and this is not a crazy thing, I'd still be more comfortable with Jayden, but I think could see Garrett I could see them still winning with Garrett. I wanted to bring something up.
Go ahead.
So Jayden Daniels last year, 68.6 completion percentage. You mentioned that. The second best completion percentage for a season in school history is 68. Well, I guess, now it's the third. It's now the third because Jayden is there at 68.6 is now the second highest in school history, and the first highest is 76.3. It's Joe Burrow, which it's almost hard to add in that 2019 season. So Jayden Daniels, the second most accurate from a completion through attempt season in school history, the most if you don't count the history winning. And people, he doesn't throw enough. 2,913 yards is good enough for the now fifth most passing yards in a season in school history. I just think people are not used to this style of quarterback play at LSU. And let me say right now, get used to it. Because before long, Ricky Collins will be playing quarterback. He will start at least a season, most likely. In my opinion, I think he'll play at some point. And he is one of the most athletic football players I've ever seen in my life. And he, at least at Woodlawn, he played a very similar style to Jayden. So if that's the style of quarterback that they're kind of looking at, just get used to it, because I feel like it's gonna be more common than not in the future.
And look, when we talk about this, it's not a knock on guys having that. And I think part of what goes into that is when maybe LSU fans, or we just kind of flip the channel over to Pac-12 After Dark, and we're watching Caleb Williams throw for 4,500 yards in a season. It's where college football is going. Now, I'll say this from my perspective. Like I said, did not grow up an LSU fan, grew up an SEC fan, watched a lot of LSU. When I go back and think of LSU football games, I think of what you mentioned, a physical ground attack. A quarterback that was willing to, play off the play action and do some things. That's why 2019 was such an eye-popping year, not only for LSU fans, but really what I think the national perspective of what LSU is. Now, a lot of this depends on recruiting. We got a chance to watch Bryce Underwood work out earlier this summer. If they bring in a guy that profiles as an elite arm, like one of those like day one NFL prospects, I promise you they're going to cater to his strengths. But right now, what you mentioned, they are, and I credit the staff for this, and this is where I think that the fan base needs to maybe understand where they are. They are doing a really good job, in my opinion, Dylan, of not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. They're allowing and catering to what the personnel dictates for this roster right now. It's a guy in Jayden Daniels who can do some damage with his legs as he gets more comfortable and more confident. Can he do it with his arm? You got a gunslinger, Garrett Nussmeier, but then you just mentioned Collins as well. It's tailoring towards your personnel, and that makes all the difference when you talk about how can you have success. So, this episode is obviously entitled LSU had the best quarterback room in the country. I think that we both walk away and say, I like the fact that Daniel said that. He mentioned in this interview at the Manning Passing Academy that Collins was like a little brother to him, kind of, helping him mature. The relationship and the camaraderie that he and Nussmeier have, and that's another thing that I don't think fans realize is kind of rare in today's day and age of college football with the transfer portal and the ease of access to be able to leave. I'm excited to watch it unfold. We're going to later on in the month, and as we get to August and fall camp, we're going to do some, questions around the position room. This is more of just based off the comments. But I think we land in the same sentence here where, look, when you talk about overall room, it's really hard to argue that this is not the best quarterback room in the country. Not individual, but room as a total and what you've seen from them.
I'm super excited to watch Nuss this year. And hey, we need to give huge props to Nuss for sticking around, learning, and just saying, hey, I'm going to bide my time. I'm going to come out to these camps. I'm going to work. I'm going to do is all I can. I'm going to be around, and I'm not going to, run at the first side of controversy. And then he'll have adversity, and he'll have 2 years, I think. The way that eligibility works nowadays throws me off. I believe he'll have 2 years to be the starting quarterback at LSU, uninterrupted, and he'll have put in the work to where by the time he starts and is the starting quarterback, you have to feel really good about where you're at, because I still don't think he's a finished product by any means, which is why you're glad that Jayden was able to stay around for another year, because you have an SEC West winning quarterback now, and then you have a guy with a ceiling as high as Garrett Nussmeier does behind him. Yeah. I would take this quarterback room over most, if not all, in the country. Again, outside of USC, just because they do have. I think USC,
Caleb Williams is going to be the top pick in the NFL draft. I mean, that guy is going to be unbelievable.
Yeah. I think USC is the only room that I think has the calling, but it's hard to. It's a big argument between which one you would rather, given the depth. I think LSU has a better depth. USC has good depth, better top talent. Is where I would fall.
I also like what you said too, and the floor is higher at LSU, in my opinion, than anywhere else. The ceiling might be higher at other places, USC. You maybe throw Georgia in there. I don't know. But the floor, what you're getting in Baton Rouge, I don't think you have that anywhere else. And that's why I think that they're good.
I don't know a other room in the country where you could confidently see the team still winning a championship if their starting quarterback gets hurt. I just don't. I really don't.
I love it.
Because everywhere else, I mean, you have the established guy and then some highly touted freshman,
who's unproven, could be amazing.
Could be amazing. We don't know. Right now, I feel like we know what we could get from Nussmeier, and he's still, hopefully he came out and kind of started to revert back to his old ways against Georgia. But again, at that point, you don't know if that's how he is or if he was just trying to win a game and then made some mistakes. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Yeah, maybe the most interesting quarterback room in the country.
I think interesting definitely takes on that title. I like it. 7 games last year for Nussmeier, 52 of 84, threw for 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But you also got to remember that SEC title game, he was slinging around. LSU was in a marathon trying to get back in that football game. So hey, I think this is a good episode. And 2, we also do it before a monsoon comes down outside, Dylan, because apparently outside my window it's going to be pretty rough. But hey, this is
welcome to Louisiana, Bryce. You could blink and it'll be gone, or you could blink and it'll be 10 times worse.
Or I could blink and the power could be out. So we don't know. We have no idea. Hey, this has been an episode of the Go 24/7 podcast. Dylan Sanders and Bryce Koon. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. You can see it right there if you're listening, at Bryce_Koon and at Dilly Sanders. Make sure to stay tuned, subscribe to the YouTube. We got some great stuff, including some live shows where we're going to be taking your comments. We're going to be, we'll be obviously at SEC Media Day is going to be a lot of fun. Some great content coming, recruiting with Sonny, and that really leads you to needing to get a VIP membership. Still running a great deal. Your first month is only $1. Look, for just $1 a day, you can feed Dylan tonight. So please.
What else could you get for $1?
I mean, I can't do
what
math
else,
that well.
What else could you get for $1? Or
not even a pack of gum.
You know?
Not
even a pack of gum. You can't go to Dollar Tree and spend $1. It's $1.25. You get a VIP membership. And cheaper than gum. Cheaper than gum. That's our motto. Go 24/7. Cheaper than gum.
Cheaper than gum. Hey, we would love for you to subscribe, join the message boards, join the conversation, and we want to see your comments down below. For Dylan, my name is Bryce Koon. We will see you next time here on the Go 24/7